Welcome, everybody that tunes into this episode. Julie's she's now claimed to be one of my good friends since we've been hanging out for a while. She is an intuitive and a psychic and an angel communicator, and I get to hang out in her energy and grow and learn with her. And I am an intuitive psychic medium myself, and so we have really
And I get
amazing
to grow and
conversations.
learn with you.
That's what we're here to support each other with. And now you all get to listen to our conversations. We just get together and talk about our own growth, our ascension, our energy, our experiences. And as you all know, the world is interesting right now and there's a collective energy going on, but we also want you to know there's a lot of other things happening in the spirit realm. And so I don't know exactly where this conversation is going to go, but Julie's already shared a little bit with me about what's going on with her, and I think that's where we need to start and just open it up and allow
Well,
spirit to flow.
well, I was thinking you needed to share what was happening with you, but what's interesting is as you're saying that, I was thinking about the law of polarity, the balance. Like you started out talking about, there's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot of chaos energy. To me, it kind of reminds me of, so I lived in Florida most of my life. And when you went into a dark room, unfortunately, sometimes you turn on the light and the roaches would go.
Yeah.
And so when the frequency raises, then it's going to create some level of chaos to create the balance. But also you're experiencing that I'm experiencing it where our sensitivities are heightened. And I think everybody's experiencing that at some level, but maybe some people are more aware of it than others. And because we've been in this space for a while, we're a little more aware. So I would love for you to share what you shared with me before we got on the call, if you're comfortable with that. Of like just how,
Yeah. Yeah. Let's
yeah.
so I, as an intuitive, as a medium, which I had knew all my life, if you kind of look back through some of our other videos, we talk about our journey. Both of us come from religion. Both of us had to open ourselves up to this a little bit more to trust it. But as I have continued to grow, and I think this is happening on a collective level, and as long as you're doing the energetic work and you're allowing yourself to trust your higher self and following spirit's guidance, I believe everybody's going to develop these abilities. But I suddenly, a month ago, like I've had visions, I've seen things, I've had before, I've seen shadows before, I've had a spirit apparition show up in my room once, but I've never had like the ability to see the actual spirits just hanging out around me. And they've been coming to me, and I've been physically seeing their energy beside me. And it may even happen during this video, during my readings. It's like every single one of them, when I've been talking to somebody, I've had this spirit come and start hanging out on my right side. And even my clients are seeing them. Even they're even like watching it going, what is that? And then as soon as I point out, hey, see that spirit, it like kind of flies out of the screen. But I'm seeing this energy more and more and more. And I think the veil of our consciousness is expanding and opening more, which is so exciting. And I just was meeting with a client or a little hour over an hour ago, and I was seeing spirits all over around him. And he was talking about how he could feel the energy, and he didn't necessarily see it, but I was like, tune in and pay attention. You'll start to see these energies around you because we all have it. We all have this massive, amazing spirit team with us. We might have a few that work with us a little bit more closer, but we all have a lot of energy that supports us during our human life. And I think as we continue to ascend and awaken and our consciousness expands, our abilities are going to open up more like this. And you might start having experiences where you see like a flash or a light. Like I even had a in-person client. I expected it just to be on video. I had an in-person client on Sunday, and I'm sitting there talking to her. I'm doing a reading with her, giving her some intuitive guidance. And all of a sudden she looks to my right and she goes, there's a light beside you. And I'm like, yeah, that's that's one of my guides hanging out over here. And so I think it's going to be really amazing to watch this continue to grow. And I'm excited to have this new gift open up for myself. I don't know what the purpose of it is, other than I know when I start to question, am I really doing this right? Am I connecting with the spirit? Am I hearing correctly? It's almost like they're redirecting me to that. Like, yeah, we're there. Didn't you see us? We were hanging out right beside you and we're always there. And then what I've also noticed is since I am seeing them more, I can feel them. Like when I'm just going throughout my day and I start to feel like I'm alone or I don't have support, like all I have to do is expand my awareness and then I can sense them. And then I've been just like smiling. Like whenever I remember, I'm like, oh, yes, you guys are there. So that's been so fun for me to like have this gift expanding, and I have no doubt this I'm not the only one that's going to have this. I think we all probably will eventually.
Yeah. I love that you shared that because um, I'm actually preparing to teach a spirit communication class tonight. And I was thinking about my experiences before I really opened up to all of this. I think there was a part of me that was always open to it, but this is the analogy that came into my mind yesterday. I was like, we know really so little about the ocean.
Mhm.
And we can, some people may observe the ocean from the land, from a hill. Some people may observe it being in a boat. Some people may observe it from being in a glass bottom boat. Some people may get into it and study it, right? And so it's kind of that way with spirit. It's like at what level are we willing to interact with it, and recognizing that, the spirit realm is as massive and in some ways I'll say unknowable as the ocean, and yet we can interact with it, we can learn, we can grow, we can have new experiences. Every time we get into the ocean, we see something a little different, we experience something a little different. And so that's like putting ourselves in a position where we're interacting with the spirit realm, we're learning and growing. And that's what I love. But when I first began really like looking beyond what I'd been taught by religious teachings, when I and when I say that, just like opening up to what spirit was bringing to me and not saying shutting it down because of some preconceived ideas I had in my mind, I thought because I had this affinity with angels, but I thought my perception was if I can't see them, then I don't really have a gift to communicate with angels.
Mhm.
That was my understanding. And so I think I was just kind of waiting around to like, well, if it's really real, eventually they'll show themselves to me. And over time, I began to learn that I just needed to open my spiritual eyes. And as I opened my spiritual eyes and let go of the expectations or the rules that I'd put around it, this says a person has a gift, but this doesn't. And this says, like all the rules that I had perceived for whatever reason, then all of a sudden it began to really open to me. And like I was telling you earlier, there's only been a handful of times when I've actually seen energy, when I've actually seen angels. And when I say angels, points of light, like, um, that are different than what you would see if the light was shining through a window or if it was reflecting off of something. Totally different movement, totally different. And there's only been a handful of times when I've seen that. But if I tune into it, when I tune in, it's kind of that way with my mediumistic skills too, because some people, and I've had this experience, which is why I started studying it, they're walking around and all of a sudden they feel this person around them and they start communicating with that person. That happens to me on occasion. On occasion, I will feel the presence, especially like with my kids who are on the other side. Like I will feel them around and I'll recognize their energy. But I'm not one of these people that walk into a crowd and see, everybody's aunts and uncles and cousins and grandmas and grandpas. But the minute that I'm sitting in front of a client, just like this week, a client's, was there for an angel reading, and she asked me if I could tune in with her grandmother. And as soon as she said that, I felt her grandmother come in this is where they always come for me.
Yeah.
So for me, it's different. And I've heard other people talk about that too. Um, but yeah, and we have to trust what we're receiving and not say, oh, because Angie's receiving it this way, then what I'm receiving is not valid, or Julie's receiving it this way, so therefore what I'm receiving isn't valid. It's really trusting and experimenting and doing it with joy and playfulness and peace and love and keeping that intention on that higher vibration.
A
I don't
hundred
know.
percent. I no, 100%. That's what, I just started teaching a mediumship course last week. And, you and I both have taken mediumship courses.
That's how we met.
That's how we met. Yeah.
That's right, a year ago.
So, there's going to be different ways of teaching different things. And one of the things I noticed were, even my individual clients that were coming to me, they were like, well, I can't see anything. There's nothing coming. I'm like, well, that's not your gift then. Your gift isn't to see. Your gift is to feel or to sense or to know or to smell. Like we all have a different way of connecting our senses open when we practice working with our senses. And so just because, I'm talking about, oh, I'm seeing something, that's not been my main gift. My main gift is feeling and knowing and just knowledge dropping in my head, like an idea pops in my head. I'm also not somebody that can walk in a room and pick up people's ancestors and loved ones around them. I have to sit down individually with somebody. And as you were saying that, what was coming through for me was spirit saying, well, could you imagine if you did that, have that gift all the time? Like how overwhelming it would be to walk around in your life and constantly be in contact with the unseen world. You wouldn't, this is where, people would not to like put down mental illness, but this is like schizophrenic. Like that's what they experience all the time. And then
Yeah.
we try to medicate it.
Well,
And
and
so,
it's so funny when you said that, I remembered. I'm trying to remember how long ago this was, but it was a few years ago, when all of this was beginning to open up for me, like, you know, uh, understanding it as because I was so skeptical. And so I wasn't really open. Like I would have friends that would say, "Oh, my daughter just sent me a heart," or their daughter who had passed had sent me a heart, and I was just like, I mean, I'm sad to say I would never say this to them, but I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's nice that you think that, right? Like that's kind of how I felt.
what makes you feel good? That's so, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Until my daughter started sending me 12s everywhere, and I could not dismiss it. And I was going around asking anybody I knew, what does 12 mean? And why am I seeing all this? And then I realized that this was the spirit world trying to get my attention. Like we're sending you messages, and if we have to hit you over the head, we're going to hit you over the head. But when you were saying that, it reminded me, I can remember exactly where I was, and I remember my spirit guides whispering to me, you don't want to have that ability to see everything. They
Mhm.
said and basically, and I can't remember exactly because it's energy, right? Like there's a form to the communication, and I can sense the communication that I received, but trying to tell you what they said. But it was basically just be careful what you ask for kind of thing. It's like they were just telling me it's okay, just be okay with where you're at and what you're receiving, and don't wish for the whole smorgasbord to show up in one tomorrow morning, because that's
Mhm.
really unsettling. I've talked to people who've had that experience.
Yeah, that's, I've had people come to me and ask me about spiritual psychosis. And like that's what it is you open yourself to everything at once, and you can't, like, we literally are not created as a human to handle that much energy. That's why we have to shift in our energy and
Oh, and
frequency and raise in our vibration. And that takes time. That takes, focus. It takes energy. It takes alignment. We're not supposed to be in, at the lowest point and then jump to the highest point, because the in the middle part is the journey of clearing out, awakening, alignment. That's really why we're human, is to take the journey towards that, not to just be it.
yeah,
And that it's really actually unhealthy to want that.
yeah.
That's kind of the ego wanting to have is acknowledge it, like, oh, look at me, I can do this kind of a thing. And you know the
It's
ego.
going from kindergarten to college.
Exactly. Exactly. Like, yeah, you might be genius and you might be able to do that, but there's still going to be little tiny things you need to learn along the way that you might miss if you just jump through all of those things. So it's a process. And I agree with you. I think we all, as we continue to shift as a collective energy and ascend, as long as you are raising your vibration, as long as you're letting go of the density that we've held on to, you will develop gifts. That is just who you are naturally. This is what I teach in my mediumship course as well. Like, you're a spirit first and a human second. And so when you understand that your spirit is your original form, then you can get to know that part of yourself and you have to teach the ego how to think. You have to teach the ego how to react. It was taught how to think and react in your childhood growing up. That's why you have the energy and personality you have now. You probably pick up personality. You probably see things all the time, like, oh, that was my mom. Oh, that was my dad. Oh, you were taught to have that energy.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because we come in as babies who are maybe slightly conditioned from our experience before we're born, but pretty pure from spirit realm, and then immediately the conditioning starts. So by the time kids leave for school, and sometimes much earlier than that, they are fully into their human experience and we're fully into the physical senses, and we've left behind the spiritual senses. I actually, in some ways, I was thinking about this. In some ways, I like to think of it as spiritual senses, and like we all have an affinity to a certain, as far as like spiritual gifts. Like, I look at it this way. So in the physical world, we all have physical senses. We all have the sense of, unless there's an impairment, but sight, hearing, seeing, feeling, all that, right? Um, and so, but everybody uses those physical senses in different ways. So you have an athlete who's using their body and their ability to move and see and feel and read the field and all of that's different than someone else who becomes a nurse. Or so we're all using our physical senses in different ways, but we get conditioned in childhood, and some of us just live out those conditions throughout our whole life. And that was part of our soul plan, was to come down here and experience life fully as a human, unawakened, and just experiencing the physical realm. But there's a lot of people, and a lot more people, as the frequency is increasing and on the earth, we can't deny that there's a change that's happening. And so as the frequency increases, more and more people are awakening back to understanding their spiritual senses, and we're all going to use our spiritual senses in different way. We're all going to be, it's actually one of the reasons I have a hard time calling myself a psychic medium. Am I? Technically, probably yes, but then I feel like people have certain expectations if I use that terminology. And so then I'm like, okay, I don't know what exactly everyone's expecting. It's these titles. They get us, it's language in general, just messes
Yeah.
us up, doesn't it?
100%. Yeah. I feel the same way. I've always struggled with calling myself a psychic or a medium. And I think because it's all about like ego, like I have an ability you don't have kind of thing. And
Yeah,
that's just not the case. That's why, like, I know you both and we both feel this, like that we all are mediums, that we all are capable of this. We just have to tap into
right.
it. As you were talking, Spirit reminded me, just I was flipping through some videos, trying to zone out for a little bit, for a break, and I came across a video where somebody was talking about the sense of smell, and the way they were explaining it, it just was like, oh my god, this is crazy. But she was talking about the how our nose smells, and as you were talking, I'm like, holy crap, we smell energy. That is what we're smelling. We are smelling the energy. We are feeling energy. We are sensing energy. We are seeing energy. So we all have these senses, the five senses of the human experience, without realizing they're actually spiritual gifts as well. So that's what we all are naturally. If you have the ability to smell, if you have the ability to see, if you have the ability to hear, if you don't have those, like I have a client that struggles with eyesight, and she asked my spirit team, the wisdom keepers, like, what do I do about losing my eyesight? Like, how do I handle this? And my spirit team came through, or the wisdom keepers came through and said, what's interesting is humans look at the physical elements as disabilities when they don't work the way that they think they are supposed to work, because that's the norm or the collective. But they said your gifts are enhanced when you have something that doesn't appear to be as the way it's supposed to. So, and I've even heard this for people that have lost hearing, like when that leaves, they start to feel things more, or when their sight goes, they hear things more, or when, whatever that is, your senses always start to work in different ways to acclimate you to the energy around you. And so if you have the ability to smell, you're picking up on energy outside of yourself. And that's a natural ability and natural gift. And that is the same thing as your intuition. It's a natural ability and a natural gift. You just have to train yourself how to tap in and feel it and sense it and know it. That extra sixth sense that we all have was there when we were born. And it didn't go away because we were taught to be a human. It didn't just disappear. It just got polluted with all the other things that we've been focused on that we can physically feel, like in our actual sensations of the human experience. And then once we tap into beyond that physical element, that automatically opens up the intuitive elements, which we all have, because that is who we really are, our spirits
Yeah.
living a human life.
Yeah. And our body is almost, I feel like in some sense, the body is the veil
Mhm.
between the spirit realm and our human existence. And it's, and it, and I was thinking, you're talking about this, and it's like, we can experiment. We have to learn to trust our connections, and it's much like a kid learning to ride a bicycle and then a two-wheel bicycle. They're experimenting. So if you think about when you were a kid, we more naturally did this. We trusted ourselves to try new things and to experiment with it. And so when it comes to connecting with the spirit realm, it's all about learning to trust that, and it's learning to receive clearer and clearer messages.
Mhm.
So the way that I like to look at it is, if I receive a message, I'm going to, like, now when I receive a message, I'm more I understand more when those messages are, where those messages are coming from. And so if you receive negative messages, just know that those are not coming from your guides. Anything that's demanding or demeaning or negative is not coming from your guides. So you can immediately put those away and go, okay, this is not the message for guidance. Sometimes we're guided, but gently to make a change, but we're never demeaned or criticized in that way. So that's the first kind of boundary to create. But then it's like just experimenting. Even when I train coaches and when I train my coaches, I'm like, when you receive an impression, something to share with your client, a direction to go in your coaching, do it with a question. Do it with a question and just say, I don't know if this resonates with you, but what I'm seeing, what I'm sensing is this, and allow them to verify. Now, if they don't verify, which in my experience, 95% of the time they do, but if they don't verify, if that doesn't resonate with them, then sometimes when that happens, and like I said, it doesn't happen very often, but when it has happened in the past, I've realized that the sense that I've received was that what I received was not necessarily wrong. It may have just been the way that I communicated it, but doing it with a question, experimenting, it, creating, working with your spirit team on things that are, because this is what we do, right, Angie? Like we go, okay, what am I supposed to do with the rest of my life? Tell me where I'm supposed to live. Tell me where what my
Tell me what to
career is.
do.
Tell me what my purpose is. And we look for the big global things. And so we put our spirit team at a disadvantage because they're like, you're not ready for the whole ball of wax. I'm just trying to show you what would be helpful
The
to you
next
this
step.
week, the next day, today. And so we put ourselves at a disadvantage. We put our spirit team at a disadvantage when we do that. So experimenting in small ways and I don't know for me it's like, okay, and maybe I've shared this before, but about a year ago, a little over a year ago, I had this because I'd been teaching about angels and it was fairly new at that point. It's been about 2 years that I've been like really teaching about it and channeling angels and so forth. But about a little over a year ago, I remember in my journaling, in my intuitive, session with myself, I just told my team, I said, okay, if I'm headed in the right direction, will you just show me 317s? Have you heard this story?
Oh,
You
but
haven't?
yeah, I've done something similar. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just like, show me 317s. And there was significance to the number 17, but and then I just let it go. I honestly forgot about it. And a couple of days later, I'm driving down the highway. I'm actually riding in the car. I'm riding down in the car down the highway, and I went, "Oh yeah, I asked for 317s." And in my mind, I thought, I guess that's not going to happen. Well, it was actually my guidance team going, "Remember, you told us to show you 317s?" Because in that moment, I looked up and there were two 17s on the GPS. And then I looked to the right and there was a 17 on the license plate. And then I was texting somebody about a calendar and there were two 17s on the calendar emoji, which I didn't even know there was a calendar emoji. So in like 30 seconds, I saw five of them.
That's clear. That's a
Yeah.
clear sign.
Yeah. They're
Our
like,
human
we can do
mind.
you a couple better. We're not going to give you three, we're
Exactly.
going to give you
Let's throw in
five.
a couple more 17s there for you. I love it. No, I've played those games too. I remember when I was really, back before I left my full-time job to do this full time, I was scared and I was like, I want to make sure I'm making right choice because, it did in my logic brain, this isn't the right thing to do. But in my creative and my higher self brain, that's where this is where my life is going. And I remember asking for so many signs. And I kept like dismissing. I know I got them all the time. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, you showed me, but one more, please. But one more, please. And I remember going on a walk, and I was like, I want to see a white feather on this walk. And I would, every time I went on a walk, I'd ask for a white feather. And I would find them. They'd be like, "Oh, that just was there was a bird here. There, whatever." And then I was on one walk, and there was an actual feather sticking up out of the ground, like it had been stuck in the ground. And I see
Like
it,
a
and I'm like,
flag.
yeah, and I'm like, and I hear, do you see it now? And I'm just like, okay, I will trust you. You've given me all these signs. I need to just allow myself to believe. And that's all about coming back to childlike faith. It's about going all the way back before we were told to start questioning everything, or how to be a human, or how to live our life, to just trust. Like
Mm.
little children, just if you tell them something, if you tell them that was a sign from grandma, they probably know more than we do as an adult, because they probably do see grandma. And so we just have to get back to the place where we trust things, and that we understand that spirit may not work in the way that we think it should. Um, I wrote down a couple of things as you were talking, because I was like, oh, that's good, that's good, that's good. One of the things that they said to me, because you were talking about practicing and like getting to know your senses and feeling them, and they just give me this example, and they said it's almost like learning how to tell the difference between a lemon and a lime, and
Mm.
understanding that they're both pretty much the same thing. They're both the citrus fruit, and they're both kind of used for the same things, but one has a different taste, one has a different look, one has a different smell. And when you get to know the two different energies about something, you can distinguish between them. So, one, you have to get to know your ego. And that's by sitting in meditation, getting to know yourself, feeling your energy, allowing emotions to rise up, understanding your triggers, then rise and move outside of that ego mind and get to know the spirit. But you can't do that without getting to know both. To understand the spirit, you have to understand yourself. And that's what the practice is you're basically learning the difference between a lemon and a lime. They're the same thing. They're both a citrus fruit. You can put both of them in your water. You can use both of them on your food, but they are just a little bit different. They have just a little bit of different energy about them, and a taste and a smell. And
So can I ask a question about what you're talking about? So when you're talking about the different energies, are you saying like comparing like the ego energy to the spirit energy, or like different I think when I opened up to more awareness, it it became more and more obvious when I was in, like, the triggers become more obvious. Like you start to notice the rise in your emotions and how things are affecting you. Like you just become much more sensitive to that, and much more I just have so many more tools now to work with that and to not have that totally spin me out. I had an experience yesterday. I was I was it came up actually in my journaling this morning. I was in I was taking a tennis drill, and I have had some issues with my knee over the last year. And, back in the fall, I would get on the tennis court and I'd only play with like my kids or grandkids because I couldn't move on the court at all. My knee was not cooperating. Well, I have a little more movement now, but it's been sore, and it was particularly sore yesterday. So this guy that was running the drill, the tennis pro, I went to hit a ball that, anyway, I won't go into all that. But I wasn't moving well on the court, and I had a knee brace on, and he's like, okay, so what you needed to do was take 9 more steps and go diagonal. And so I'm like, if I could, I would. And I felt my ego getting in there going, I would if I could. I'm frustrated by this too. Like I could just feel like you can hear it in my voice, like that frustration of I would love my body to be able to do that, but it's just not doing it right now. So that was like this rise in that frustration and that like human ego of I want everything to be working correctly and it's not. And that feels very different than when I feel the presence of my angels or my guides or even my kids or my brother, my kids that have passed. Um, and I don't yeah, so I was just
Yeah,
that's
no,
kind of
I
what you're
think that's
talking
a
about.
yeah, that's an excellent question. And I love that example because what's interesting is there's a frustration in when you're not able to do something.
Hmm.
Because the ego is like, I should be able to do this. If Angie and
Well,
Julie
it's like I used to be able to do this. What's wrong?
yeah, yeah. And that's the same thing for ourselves. Like we did used to be able to do these things. We just got kind of gaslit to not listen to our intuition as we grew up. Like, oh, that intuitive hit you got that you shouldn't hug that one person. You should hug them because they're your family.
Yeah.
But that we're taught not to listen to that little subtle voice. And so that's what we have to get to know. And so, but your ego's job is to protect you. Your ego job is like, wait, hold, hot, you're not ready for that. Julie, your knee's going to hurt right now because you're not ready to run across the court like that. But you want to. Your ego's like, I want to do this. But to be in the flow, you have to build yourself back up into that. You have to
Hmm.
train the knee. You have to work with it. And that's the same thing with the ego. You work with the ego. You get to know it. You get to know, why is it holding me back right now? Is there a reason? Is there a trigger coming up so I can release it? And then when you start working with that energy and you expand it and you get to know the difference between is this my ego or this is my spirit, they actually start to merge together and they because the ego just wants to be loved. When your ego feels loved, it's going to be like you can do whatever you want. Bliss and love, I know I'm important, so I don't need to prove myself. That releases the grip so that you can expand in your energy and flow more. And that's when you get the subtle hints of when something shows up around you that's not your energy because you know what your energy feels like, and that wasn't my energy. That wasn't me that came through, or it was my higher self, and I hear it from a different perspective because my ego feels safe and it doesn't have to protect me in this moment. And I mean, this is
Yeah. Yeah. Comparing that energy that I felt in the middle of that class and, just that kind of that rise of frustration to the energy that I felt when I was woke up at 3:30 in the morning. And I um, just all morning long, I was drifting in and out of sleep and just so much love, like so much really divine energy just flowing and that and you know just basking in that like my whole morning was just amazing and it's not like that every day and that's part of the cycles of living a life but being in that's the polarity, right? And so we not only experience the polarity in our life, but we experience the polarity in the world. So you have these really challenging things that are happening in in countries and lands and places where there's battles and wars and upheavals and communities that are in upheaval um, and then you have this there's the collective that are working towards more enlightenment that and it used to be this is really interesting so it used to be that um and I learned this from a woman who had an NDE and she was shown this and she was shown that she was on a council where they placed spirits like helped place where they were going to be. And the way she explained it was super fascinating, was that it used to be that the collective that was coming down that were and I used to have a lot of problem with this. So let me back up a little bit because I really struggled with this when somebody first told me about this. I'm like, yeah, but there's people who are more advanced spirits, and there's also different soul plans for our placement here. It doesn't make one person better than another. It's just more that it's more like, okay, older brother is in high school and you're in first grade. Like there's just a progression.
Mhm.
So looking at it that way is just like it's not better or worse that the ninth grader is no better than the first grader. It's the progression. So, but basically what she was shown was that there before like I think she said like mid 1800s, they were um those that were more advanced souls were placed in communities of more advanced souls, and those who were, not as advanced were placed in communities with less advanced souls. And what she was shown was that they began to place those that were more advanced within families and communities that weren't, in order to start to um, spread that light, I guess, for lack of a better word. And it was an experiment, and sometimes it went well and sometimes it didn't. But if if you're like a lot of people that I know, um, and I know you've had this experience, Angie, and a lot of people I know have had this experience where they're like, I don't fit with my family. They don't get me. They don't, and I have a wonderful family. There definitely were challenges, but I have a wonderful family. But at the same time, my energy was different. And I'm not saying that, please don't misunderstand what I'm saying, but just recognizing that it's okay if we feel different within our circumstances. I don't know where I was going with all that. You know, again, like Angie said at the beginning, we don't plan this at all.
Yeah, this is
And
all.
you can tell because because I can kind of ramble, but we just let spirit take the conversation where it's going to go. So it's kind of
Yeah.
fun. It's kind of fun.
It's so interesting that you say that because it's true. Like you just have this intuitive knowing inside of you that you're supposed to be doing something, or like you're here for a mission, or whatever that is. And I think everybody has this purpose and calling in their life that they're supposed to move towards something. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a cook at a restaurant, it could be
Yep.
an artist, it could be a teacher, it could be a politician. Like
Not
your
everyone's going to want to get on
no, not
something
everybody
like this and talk
be
about
absolutely not. If everybody was doing that, the world would be so chaotic. And
we would have no
so
food to eat.
exactly, but that inner pulling that you have doesn't ever go away no matter what you do. Like I could go try to be I'm not a cook, but I could go try to be a cook in a restaurant, but my heart would still be here. And I would, that's why we have to release the ego sphere of like, I may think I'm only capable of doing this, but inside my heart is pulling me over. Maybe I'm doing the dishes and my heart is saying, you're supposed to be the chef. You're supposed to be the chef. Then I have to begin to do the work to trust that I can do that. Because if you have that calling in your heart, then you are supposed to. Not one is better than the other. If you don't
No.
have somebody doing the dishes, then you can't be a chef. Like they work in alignment with one
Yep.
another. And that's what everybody in the collective is meant to be, is to bring alignment. When you're in your purpose, when you're following your heart's desire, alignment happens with everybody. And there's what I like to call it is the experienced souls, not
Mm,
old souls or advanced souls. It's like somebody that has gone on a trip to another country and experience it. It's going to have awareness of what it's like for somebody that hasn't. That's just experience. Our souls have experienced more. And so there's more light and wisdom that has expanded because of our experiences. And sources told me, and I've seen this in a vision, that is continually. So when I say source is God, it is continually creating more and more and more and more of itself. It's never ending. That's what infinity and eternity is, expansion of itself more and more. So, in our original form, when we're not in our human ego and we're not comparing ourselves to another human,
Yeah.
we're all the same. We are
Yeah.
all the same light and frequency, and we all benefit from one another because we are all one. And if we were all the same, then that frequency and energy would not be as beautiful as it is. Like just like the disco ball, like there's lights all around it, and not a single one of the mirrors is each other, but it creates this beautiful light. And so the souls that maybe we could consider to be not as advanced, they're not any different than the advanced ones. They're just coming to play a different role and have a different experience, and they're going to move through that layer of learning as well. But we're here to help teach them based on our understanding, because I've been there, I've done that. That's what Jesus does. That's what Buddha does. That's what the master teachers, they all were human. They've been here, they've done it. Some of the alien races that we work with, they've been here, they've done it. That's why they're supporting us, saying, hey, wait, nope, just calm down. Things will be okay. We've seen this happen before. We know that it's scary right now, but we got you. This is, let me remind you who you really are. And
Yeah.
then we have to have that throughout the universe. That they help, the masters help us, the higher dimensionals, the angels. That's what the process of the universe works in, is I help you and you help me and we all help each other.
Yep.
So that's why there's that maybe more advanced soul in a community of people that are ready to move into that next realm of advancement. So
Yeah.
there's nothing different or wrong. It's just we're all working together as a collective energy.
I love that. Yeah. And when we first started talking, I was really thinking in terms of, because one of the things I've been experiencing, and I don't want to lead us down a whole nother trail, so maybe we'll talk about this next time. But as I have watched my own sensitivity increase, um, I have had to manage my energy differently. And so we see the chaos in the world. And so just as a little aside, because we kind of started with that, w- uh, just to protect your energy, to disconnect from those things, like paying attention to the things that are bringing down your energy, paying attention to those things that are bringing up your energy. And it's not that um I never engage with something that, brings down my energy, because I'm still deconstructing some things. And so in the deconstruction process, we may still be engaging with things that don't necessarily feel good, but we need to engage with it in order to clear it, and then using that law of polarity to make sure that we're balancing well with the things that are bringing our energy up, so we don't become out of balance. So we're clearing, but we're also bringing in the good. So I don't know why I brought that up, but somebody needed to hear it, so
Somebody needed to hear that.
including
Absolutely.
me, I needed to hear
Yes.
it.
Yes. Me too.
And
Absolutely.
actually, as I said it, and this is the way it always is, and that's why I love these conversations, is because I'm learning as I'm sharing. It's like they bring in this energy and this information, and as I'm talking, I'm like, I've never thought of that way before. But as I was expressing that, it was allowing me to see for myself some of the choices that I'm making and why I'm making those choices, and that some of the choices that I'm judging as bad are not necessarily bad. Like, we can get rid of all the bad and good stuff, but it's more, rather than thinking of things of this is bad and this is good, it's like what feeds that energy so we feel that uplift, and what causes us to go into
Mhm.
a slump or a spiral. Anyway,
Absolutely.
always good to talk to you. Always, always.
Always love it. Can't wait till next time. I'm sure it will be fun again. So thank you all for tuning in, and Go follow Julie on all her social stuff, look up her website, work with her, come see me, do whatever you need. But we're here to support you guys, and as we're students as well. So
Exactly.
great. Have a great
Uh,
day.